Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my 2024 library tour. This is part 8 of Science Fiction and Fantasy, a game of procrastination. But before we get to the Great Procrastinator, there are a few other books on this final shelf of this double-sided shelving unit that I use as a bookcase. So let's get going. First is Fury Born. Book one of the Imperium trilogy by Claire Legrand. I don't know much about this book. I don't actually remember why I have it. I must have saw it on SFF 180, Thomas of SFF 180's mailbag and thought it sounded interesting, but I've never gotten around to reading it or giving it a try chapter tag. The next two books are by Fritz Leiber. First up is The Best of Fritz Leiber, put out by Nelson Doubleday. So this is a collection of Leiber's science fiction short stories. I picked it up. I want to say this was one of the earliest books I picked up from the Wicklow-McLennan County Friends of the Library book sale. I got around to it a year or two ago and didn't care for it. Next up is the Fawford and Grey Mouser series. I have an omnibus, the Three of Swords, which is an omnibus collection that includes Swords and Deviltry, Swords Against Death, and Swords in the Mist. I checked this out from the library 15 or so years ago. And I eventually wanted a copy of it. And I think this is actually the copy that I read from the library because it is an ex-library copy from the Wicklow-McLennan County library system. And I picked it up from the Friends at the Library book sale. Although I have not yet gone back to it. And I don't know if I ever will. Next up is a classic of children's fantasy. The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. So this is an omnibus edition that includes all of the Narnia novels in a movie tie-in cover. It also has some stills from the movies, I think. No? Actually doesn't. Okay. So it includes... So the order of the novels in here are The Magician's Nephew, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, The Horse and His Boy, Prince Caspian, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, and The Last Battle. So this is done in chronological order rather than publication order. I've never gotten around to it. I've read a snippet of one of the Narnia books, and of course I've seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, both the animated version and the live action from about 20 years ago. The next two books are by Ken Liu. They're the first two books in the Dandelion Dynasty tetralogy. First up is The Grace of Kings. This is a successful Belle redemption. It's Silkpunk, which is sort of an Asian-inspired steampunk set in a world inspired by the fall of the Qin Dynasty and the rise of the Han Dynasty. And as I was reading the book, either for the bailing or for the redemption, I was thinking I'd much rather have an actual history of the Qin Dynasty and the Han Dynasty. The second book in the series is The Wall of Storms, which is about the children of the main protagonist from the first book trying to prove their worthiness to succeed to the throne. as well as dealing with an invasion from a distant land, and then going to explore that distant land. Although that might be the subject of the third book. Anyway, this book is heavy. Sticking with a two for a theme, I have two books by Scott Lynch. They're part of the Gentleman Bastard series. I have The Lies of Locke Lamora, which I don't know why I have, because I read this before I picked it up from the library and hated it. So I don't know why I bought it from Golden's, but I did. It's basically about a thief and con man getting into adventures. Yeah. And for some reason, I also have the sequel, Red Seas Under Red Skies. Let's see if these two will be kind enough to. The next three books are not, or the next batch of books are not in twos, these are in threes. It's the first three books in the Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyons. The first book is The Ruin of Kings. This is about a young man who discovers his family and that he is reincarnated half of something or other and is getting involved in the end of the world. This first book is split into two parts, well, really three. So, up until the climax, one part of the story is how the main character got started out and got to the point where another narrative begins. And then there's a bit of faux scholarship involved. I mean, the book's okay, but it lost me partway through. And I've never bothered to read the other two books that I picked up in the series. Fortunately, I did resist the urge to pick up the other two books, the final two books in the series. So, book two is The Memory of Souls. And book three is The Name of All Things. No, actually, this is book two. The Name of All Things is book two. The Memory of All Souls is book three. That doesn't mean a range book while I'm at it. Okay. Next, the next three books are standalones. They don't have any sequels to them. One of which I know does have sequels, but I fortunately don't have them. And these other two, I don't know if they have sequels yet or not. So the first up is Gates of Stone by Angus MacCallum. It does say it is a Lord of the Islands novel, so perhaps eventually there will be sequels. So basically, this novel, it takes place in a world loosely inspired by East Asia, with some Russia thrown in, and it's very island oriented. And one of the main characters is basically Cersei Lannister if she were a protagonist. I did not like this too much, and I don't really remember much of it. The next book is The Velocity of Revolution by Marshall Ryan Maresca. This is a novel that is not set in his Meridian series. It is about kind of a diesel punk setting with a tyrannic government and a policeman trying to go undercover in a revolutionary organization. I have not gotten around to it. I don't know if I ever will. I did try Maresca's one of his Day novels and didn't particularly care for it. So anyway, next up is The Kingdom of Liars by Nick Martell. Does not have the series um, name on the cover, although there are at least, I think this is a full trilogy. That's about a young man trying to restore his family's good name after being accused of assassinating the emperor or the king. I read the prologue a few weeks ago for a try chapter tag and did not like it at all. So finally, I conclude this shelf with A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. Martin. I have the first two books in mass market paperback, A Game of Thrones, and A Clash of Kings. So, A Song of Ice and Fire probably doesn't really need much of an introduction, but it's basically the prelude to a traditional epic fantasy. Normally, in epic fantasy, the states, kingdoms, what have you, of the main characters are prime for a magical or supernatural assault. And they're sort of in disarray, they're at each other's throats, and A Song of Ice and Fire is largely that process. The story of the seven kingdoms of Westeros descending into multi-year civil war, they're at each other's throats. There's a dispossessed princess who wants her throne back, or her family's throne back. And all the while, there's a looming threat to the north that they will never actually invade because, it's been, 13 years since the last book. It's never going to get published, but anyway. But say it did. The main supernatural threat will have an easy time of it, or should. But anyway. So, I read A Game of Thrones about, over 20 years ago. I read it in the summer of 2002. And I subsequently bought the trade paperbacks of Clash of Kings and Storm of Swords and read it during my freshman year of college. Although, I should say I skipped the chapters of the characters I didn't like, and I skimmed the chapters of the characters I did like, more so than read them. And then I got rid of them all. And eventually, when I started to get the idea that I wanted to devote my reading life to science fiction and fantasy more thoroughly than I had, that I wanted my collection to be practically all science fiction and fantasy, I periodically, I would either check out A Game of Thrones from the library and try to read it, which didn't go well. And I ended up picking up these. Now, I picked this up from Golden's, I think. I think I picked this one up from the paperback fiction version of the Friends at the Library book sale. And I haven't actually gotten to these yet, which I probably won't. I think, in a way, for me at least, the first three books of A Song of Ice and Fire, what I've read of them, are really just that one-time read. They really don't interest me enough to really want to reread them as religiously or as often as the fans are. Because I think, in a way, there are certain things about A Song of Ice and Fire that are interesting. But I think, in a way, it's also there are things that aren't really interesting, that I find incredibly boring. I love magic in my fantasy, and I don't really enjoy um, when there isn't a whole lot of magic, which, to be honest, is what A Song of Ice and Fire is. There's very little magic, not to the level that I want, anyway. And it really just doesn't do it for me. So, anyway, that wraps up part 8 of science fiction and fantasy. I will be back next week to finish up science fiction and fantasy. There are 4 more shelves to go, which will be here behind me with my brother's bookcase. And in case you want to know, these 2 third shelves will constitute a shelf on its own rather than doing um, this shelf and then this shelf. I'll just do them both on Monday, and then the shelf behind me on Tuesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday. And then on Friday, I'll take a break, and then I'll figure out where I want to go next for the tour. I have been filming, or I have some parts of the classics, canonical, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, and drama shelves done. But I would like to get the other 3 shelves done for that before I start to upload them. And I also have a purge. So I might take a break from the tour and just go ahead and do the 2024 library purge. Anyway, I'll figure it out over the weekend and, well, over the next 2 weeks. Because, I mean, I have a whole week to go. Anyway, I will see you later this evening with weekly reads and possibly a book haul. So until then, thank you, BookTube. Have a great day and stay safe.